Hello everybody, welcome to this tutorial on how to use Deno to build a simple application, a simple API, a REST API, and we're going to use this new awesome tool that is a runtime for JavaScript and TypeScript. So the first thing you need to know is that at this time Deno is in its 1.0 version, and it's really early. It's the preview of the alpha of Deno, so there is a lot of things that is going to change in the future, but they really actually have built a standard library that they say they will not change so much. So it's also there is some kind of stability in this version of Deno, which really gives us hope that this framework, that this new tool we have got, is really going to make the future of applications, of web applications at least. And let's start by digging some modules, because we could write our application with the standard library, but it's just going to take a lot of time, a lot of effort, and we should not do this. We should first look at some modules that can help us and that are more developer friendly. So we're going to need some things to build a simple API, and the first thing is a web server, and for that we're going to use Oak, which is inspired by Koa, the platform that runs on Node.js. Koa is also really awesome. I have not that much experience with Koa in Node.js. I actually have used Express a lot more, but we are going to get used with it. It's actually really easy to develop, and Oak is also a word joke for Koa, just as Deno is for Node. So for working with database, we're going to use this Postgres driver that we found here in the 30 part modules of Deno, and it works well actually. I have did some tests with it. I don't really know that we are going to find some unexpected behaviors when running queries. I hope not. So we are going to do just that. And this is the only available library for working with Postgres at the moment. Also, I don't think there is any object relational model right here. There is no ORM, and we searched for it. There is nothing that much that could help us for writing without using raw SQL queries. So we're going to use raw queries to build our app, and it's going to work just fine. And I'm thinking of making a second video where we can do more with JWT, with bcrypt for hashing the user passwords, because I haven't told you, but this app is going to be really simple. All we're going to do is to build some user routes, user registration. We can query for users. There's going to be only some simple things in this API. Let's get started. Make sure you have Deno installed in your workspace. So I have right here a folder where I can create my project. So I'm going to create another one. I'm going to call this YouTube Deno. You can call it whatever you want, and we are going to get started. So let's create a new file. We're going to save that just as app.ts, and here we have it. Actually, I'm going to create a source folder just to make some the things more organized. I'm going to bring up my terminal right here. You can do this. You can do that right here in terminal in your VS Code, and creating a new terminal. So Deno is installed here, as you can see. It is the 1.0.0 version, and let's go into let's get started. So we're going to copy the example right here in Oak. We need to import Oak, so we're going to import application from this URL, and we're going to use just that, just build some simple hello world app, and let's analyze this code and see what's happening. So this application is the base of Oak, and we're going to create an instance of that application, and here we define our middlewares, our request handlers, and a lot of things. So we always have the context available when we are registering an use function, which is a middleware function. And we are going to just set the body of the response to hello world. And this is just a plain text string, and we're going to see what happens when we run this. So if you run Deno run source-app.ts, we're going to get an error. And you can see also that no dependencies were downloaded because I already have this installed at my local machine. This code right here is cached. And this is one of the features of Deno. We download the source code of our libraries, of our dependencies. Right when we run the code, we do not have the package.json, no node modules, everything is cached in some directory in your computer. And the reason why this isn't giving me an error is because I have the Deno extension installed in my VS Code. Otherwise, you would see an error saying that you cannot specify the file extension of your TypeScript or JavaScript files. You would get an error, but since I have Deno installed, the Deno extension, this doesn't happen here. Let's run this, and the permission denied error, which was what we saw earlier, we need to pass this flag right here when we run, and no error should occur anymore. So I am going to pass it before the file name, and it's running. There is no output in the console because we did not write any output. So look, just to make things a little bit nicer for us, let's write a console.log right here. I'm going to put an rocket emoji just because we want to make things awesome. And let's run right here, server started at port 8000. And that's it. Now we can run our code again, and we are going to see the output right here when we run our code. If you put this below this await app.listen, you will not see any output. So to be able to do this output after, there is another way of setting things right here. But this listen function, it stops the code execution until you close with Command C or Control C in Windows, until you close the execution. So we just put it over here. There's no problem. It is actually not that much true that the server has started, but this is going to work. Just make sure that we put something right here, some output, so we can know when our server starts. When we run this and access the local host right here at the port 8000, we saw right here, hello world. We are getting the job done right here, folks. So let's start building something more useful, because this isn't useful for anybody. The first thing I'm going to make is go right here in the documentation and put these two middlewares here. They're going to help us to know more about what's happening in our app, in our API. So let's understand what this is doing. We have here a timing and a logger. So this function right now is a little bit different. We are getting the context and a next function right here. So when we await this next function, all the code that's below this await is going to be ran after a request is handled. So this await next, there is an important reason why it is here. Well, what are we doing in our logger? First, we are getting this header from the response. So this response object right here has a headers object which we use to get the X response time that is going to be defined right over here. And we're just logging. So we're logging the request method and the request URL followed by the response time of this response. The timing middleware is doing some kind of the same. So the first thing we do here is define a start date, which is actually a timestamp. So this is going to be in milliseconds, and we define this start date. We await the handling of the request, and after the handling, this right here is going to set an X response time header, which has the amount of milliseconds it took to handle our request. And this is how we do it. So all this logic is already built in some modules of Node.js, and you never saw how it actually works, and now we are seeing this here, and this helps us understand a little bit more about web servers. Well, our application is still not so much useful. It's still useless. But right now, what we have is that when we access our localhost, we have nothing in the response. But right here, we have the login, and it took 0 milliseconds because we aren't processing anything at all. So we're not handling any requests at all. The next step is to build a router where we can handle our requests. So let's create a new file right here. I'm going to call this file user.controller.ts. Why am I going to call it this? Because we are going to work with users. With this, that's the goal of our app, is to register, is to watch, or I mean not watch, but read from the database the users that are registered. And how we do this? Well, let's copy this, paste here, and import the router from Oak. Let's create a new router. So router equals to a new router. So router, and right here we have our methods. And let's create a get handler, and right here we write the path of the route. So this is going to be dash users, and here is the middleware section, or the handling of the request. So let's put right here the context, and that's all we need for now. Context dot let me just see if there's something wrong here. So this is the context, context.response.body equals, and let's write right here something more useful, like an ID, which will be 1, and a name, and an email, which we're going to define just here. And this is giving me an error, but there's no problem. Let me just cut that. and put it over here. So that's how we do it. The easy way, we are putting our object inside an array in the body. So let's export default router. So we are exporting this router from this file, and in our app we're going to use app.use, and let's import user controller from .usercontroller.ts. In Deno you have to put the file extension, and inside this app.use we're going to put user controller and routes, and finally allowed routes. So we need to run these two methods to use the routes that we defined here. So if we access that users and we need to run our program again, right here we can write users, and that's the output of our code. So I'm using an extension here to beautify JSON, but what we can see is that Oak already detected that we are sending JavaScript objects and set the content type of our response to application-json, and we can verify that over here in the requests in the network section of developer tools. You can see right here response headers, we have the response time and the content type application-json, and we already have the char set of that response. So Oak did this for us. We did not have to do this by ourselves. And we can define more methods here, like post and get with route params. For example, -users -:id, just how we are used to do in Express. So context.response.body equals to a user. But how do we get the params, which is the ID, from here? Well, first we need to check that it exists inside context.params, and this object is a dynamic object that is used, that is populated when this is populated in the request. So if context.params and context.params.id, which is the name that we have put right here, then we can do something. So let's write right now another user object, and we are going to create it just right here, and we are putting his ID just inside the object. So this is going to be context.parents.id, and let's try it out. So let -users -1 or -2 right now. Oops, I have to start the file again, and here we go. We have the 2, and anything we put here is going to be the ID of the user. So that's how we get the request params. Well, this is not hitting any database. This is not doing anything that useful. To use database, we need our Postgres module, and we have it just right here. So let's create a new file, which I am going to call db.ts, and we are going to import our client from this Postgres module, create this client right here, and just export it. So export default client, and I need to configure this to work with my local Postgres. Well, my local Postgres is running inside a Docker container, and you can check that just right here in my Docker extension. I have this container of Cartosa Postgres that's running, and there's a Postgres database running there. We can check that right here on PostgreSQL, and there is the SQL that you are going to run. So I am just going to put this right here, db.sql. So you have to run this SQL right here to structure your table user inside your database, and this is going to be available in the repo for this project. Alright, so my user right here is Docker. The database is called Deno, as you can see right here. Deno is my database that I'm working with, and there is my user table is already created inside this table user, inside this database Deno. That's the host name, the port is this, and finally I also have to pass in the password, which I'm going to get in a moment. Alright, I have got my password, so this should connect, and I'm now going to import db from db.ts. So that's how we import the client from this Postgres module, and we now can use it to write raw SQL queries. And right here it already tells us how to do this. So let's try something. Inside my get users, I'm going to delete everything, all of this, and my context.response.body is going to be empty. I'm going to write a try catch right here, and please don't forget you need to run this statement right here to create your table and set up your database correctly. Alright, so inside this try catch we need to do something. So if there is an error, I'm going to log it and use context.throw error. So this way our web server keeps running if there is an error. And the next thing I'm going to do is to get the result actually. So result equals await db.query, and we're going to pass the text, which is going to be a simple query, select asterisk from user, and I need to put this inside brackets. So select all from user, and that's everything I need to write right now. Let's make this an async function, and finally we can call right here result dot rows of objects. If we call here only result.rows, this is going to return an array of the rows and will not have any columns, so we don't know how to treat this object data. So let's just write it result dot rows of objects, and that's all we need to do right now. Let's run our server again, and it worked. If there is an error connecting to the database, you should see it right here. So there was no error connecting to my local Postgres database. That's why we see this beautiful server started output. And something you have to know is my database already has some data. So use your favorite database manager to insert some data inside your table, or you can work with some data from the internet. Do whatever you need to do to seed your database so we can see the result inside our API. And we see it right here. Our database objects are created. We are using Postgres to do this, and there it is. We have the first route of our API working successfully. Let's do more. We can. So we instead of creating a plain object right here, we're going to do more. So let's write const result equals await db.query, and we put just right here select all from user where id equals, and that's how you pass arguments to your query. You put the $sign and the position of your argument. It starts at 1, not at zeros, and you pass your argument inside this args, which is an array of our objects. So we're going to pass context.params.id, and we can put here result.rows of objects, and because this is an array, we want to get the first item of this array that's returned by this function, and that's how you get the first item. So let's convert this to an async function, and now this should work. So put, just for safety, a semicolon here, and run our app again. Alright, server started. Let's copy some ID of one of our users and put it in the URL. And there you have it. It's working perfectly. We have the data back from the database. That's something really funny. I wrote Tony Start as the display name of this user and Tony Stark as his email. So that's definitely not Tony Stark. Also, you're getting the password from the database, which is really not good. We should not have this information available to the public, and that's something we can easily correct just by selecting just by specifying which fields you want to select. And we have our get routes. Now we need to be able to post to our URLs, to our users routes. So you have already noticed that English is a little bit hard for me to pronunciate, so please forgive my really weird pronunciation of words in English. And let's get going. So how do we insert data inside our database? Well, you have to use an insert statement, and we can see it right here inside the Postgres documentation. Any database, any SQL database uses a really close syntax to that. So insert into the name of the database, the fields you need to insert, and the values you want to insert. So if we look at our users, we have the display name, the email, the password, and a birth date that we can pass in. So all these fields right here, it's something that a user would fill. We also have an avatar that is likely to be the URL of the user picture. So this is not required, especially for this API that's so early, and I don't really even know why I have put this in the structure of this table. So anyway, we need to pass this data inside a post method. So right now, to test our app, our API better, we need another tool, which is going to be Insomnia. This is a client for testing REST APIs, and you can see I use it a lot. I'm going to use it inside a new workspace, which I'm going to call Deno, and I can now set my requests here. So let's try get users. I'm going to create a simple environment just to make things easy. So HTTP localhost 8000 So put it right here, API URL dash users. Let's send, and we get our data right here. And now we can also send post requests and test our API better. So let's duplicate this and let's put it just to make sure everything's working. Let's copy a user ID, put it here, send, and there it is. There are the headers. Everything's also working really nice and well. And let's go create user. And this should be a post method. It is going to be inside the users route, and we're sending JSON. So we're going to send the display name of our user, which is going to be Jessica something. I don't remember her name, so let's try something more easy, like John Doe. And email, we can put jonathandoe@mail.com. Password, so hard to guess. And finally, it's going to be the birth date, which we are not going to give. We don't want people to know how old we are. So Jonathan Doe does not like to people to know his age. And if we send this, look what we have. 405 method not allowed. That's because we have nothing inside here. How do we get the body of our request? Context.request.body. And that's all we need. And this body is actually a function, which is really awesome. So that's great. I have not come to this yet. So let's see, Oak, if we have anything about the body. Oh, context.request.hasBody. That's really nice. And the body options. The method resolves body types of JSON text and URL encoded form data. If content type is missing, the request will be rejected with a 415 HTTP error. Alright, let's see what options we have available. Oh, so we can pass here the content types that we accept. And we also need to call this function with await, it's a promise. And there is automatic. Okay, let's make just as the example, and let's test what happens. So has body. If we have no body, we do not want to do anything. And try this, context.request.body, and we have the result value. So let me do a console.log to see what we're going to have inside this value, if it is a string that needs to be parsed, or if it is already the JavaScript or TypeScript in this case. Anyway, everything is JavaScript object. And we have 30 minutes of video. I hope you are enjoying this. Alright, let's just do this. Probably there are going to be some error because I do not set any response at all. Let's try it. Oh, alright, so nobody. And oh, here it is. Well, I still don't know. Let me write the type of to know for sure. And let's see. Server started. Alright, it's an object. So const data equals result.value, and let's insert this data. And it should be pretty easy. Const result. Oh, we have another result value here. So I'm going to put this as body, and that should make it work. So await db.query, put our text here, and our args equals, so insert into user, and as we see in the documentation, we pass in the columns and then after that the values. So it should be easy. We are only inserting these 3 fields. So insert into user display name, email, and password, values $1, 2, 3, and data dot display name, data dot email, data dot password. So right now we are not trusting the user that made this request. We are not validating the data, and this is pretty unsafe and really not ready for production environments, but it's a way to test Deno. And let's log this result. Actually, let's put it in the body. Context.response.body equals result dot rows of objects. Let's see what's going to be returned, because insert does not return data. That's something really important to note. Actually, we can return the ID, I guess. So returning Postgres insert returning, and what can we return? So returning, just pass this, returning ID. Let's try this way. I guess we can't return multiple columns. I really would like to see some examples with returning. Oh yes, right here. So we pass in returning. Oh, we can return all the fields. Let's try that. Let's see what we can get. And rows of objects, it's an array, and we pass in the first array. So run again. Start it, and let's see what errors we are going to get. Send, and there it is, an error, which we do not get at all. We don't know what happened. Let me just see. Okay, I don't know, this seems to be right. So let's put right here a try catch and do what we are used to. Context.row, move all of this inside our try, run. Yeah, okay, so running, send, and what is the error? Oh, of course, this needs to be inside brackets. Yes, Postgres has this weird issue. It's not an issue, it's actually how it works. It does not care about if your values are lowercase, uppercase, it has no case sensitivity. That's what I was looking for. Well, let's test and see. It works really well. So if we return all the fields, we get everything back, which includes our password. That's really nice. This way we do not have to do some weird coding here where we would return just the ID and then use this ID to query on user, where we would just repeat this function here. It makes no sense. It's really nice that Postgres has this returning feature. Okay, we can create and list users. We still need to delete and update users. So this video is going to be a little longer. And I don't think I'm going to be able to post it in my channel because I cannot post any videos that are longer than 25 or 20 minutes. I don't remember. Okay, so how do we update? With put. So put inside users column ID context, and right here let me just copy and paste this because everything is going to be pretty similar. So we take the body, we take the value, we only accept JSON, and that's weird. It's inside here we are putting application dash JavaScript. Well, it works, so I'm not going to mess it with something that works. And our insert here is going to be an update, and we are going to put where ID equals 1. And Postgres, this update have returning. Oh yes, it has. So update table. Oh yes, it's not update into. My mistake, sorry for that. So update user set. So we are going to update the display name, email. Oops, this should be 2, 3, 4. Where ID equals 1, returning all the columns. I think that this is correct. Let's just test it out. Duplicate this, update user, copy this ID, put ID inside here, and we did not do something really important, which is get the user ID and also put the user ID inside here. So const ID equals context.parents.id, get all of that put inside here, and here we have it. I think everything is right. We just have to pass the ID here, and let's run our code. So John Doe, we are going to transform you into Scarlett Johansson. I don't know if I misspelled this, I'm sorry if I did. So Scarlet, you are an Avengers member, and your password is really hard to guess because you're awesome. And here we have our ID. So which user ID did I grab? Oh, John Lennon. Okay, so update, it should be put, otherwise we would create a new user. Let's run our code again, send, and it works really well. So if I change my email right here, there it is. Man, our API is rocking. I know it is really not safe and really not production ready, but it shows you you can build something with Deno. That's our goal here. Let's write our final and ending terminating route handler. Delete. So let's pass right here the context. And what we should do is again get this ID. Let me grab it this way. It's a little nicer. And we do not need any body content. All we need is this query, and we only have to pass the ID. So this, I think I know, delete from user ID, and we won't return anything. So if our request is successful, context.response.status equals 204. 204 means no content, which also means this was a successful operation. So just to make sure, if result dot rows, I don't know the number of affected rows, I don't really know, but let me do a console.log result.rows just to see exactly what is the return of this. So let's duplicate our get user, make it a delete user. And which user are we going to delete? I guess we can delete myself. I do not deserve to be in this table. So send. Okay, worked really fine. If I try to get all the users, I should not see myself. If I try to get myself, which I have the ID, nobody returned 404 not found. That's really cool also, because that's the right response status code, 404. The resource was not found. There are no user with this ID. So it's working as expected. And we can still update Scarlet because she still exists. We can create other users, but if I try to delete me again, would this bring a 404? I don't think so. And why? Because what's inside my result.rows? Well, the first time I ran this delete right here, the result.rows was empty. The second time I run the delete, it was empty again. So this means this rows result is empty no matter if the user was actually deleted from the database or not. Because I think the most correct or the most right response here should be 404. if the user we are trying to delete doesn't exist. So this way, whatever was our client, it knows that he's trying to delete something that doesn't exist. And to do that, well, we probably need to mess with the delete. Maybe we can use returning and return the ID. Let's test this out and see what we're getting back. And let's hope this works. Man, Postgres is really awesome, that's why. So get users. Okay, we are going to delete Jane Doe. Jane Doe is not meant to be, does not deserve to be in our table too, so send, and haha, there we go, returning works. Postgres is amazing. I already told you that. So we are going to check. So if result.rows 0, because we want the first inside this array, and what we have here, we have an array and another array. So we are accessing an array inside an array. So pos 0 and 0 again. What we are checking? We are checking that this right here exists. So if that's the case, context. Otherwise, we do nothing, which means we're all for. At least that's what I hope for. Let's test it out. We are going to delete another user, so send, and we're actually getting a 500. And I think that's because when this is empty, there are no second array inside it. So what we can do here, if result.rows.length, that should be the correct way. I should have done this before. So if rows are empty, 4 perfectly. And let's create a new user. We are going to create Hawk I know that's not his name, I just do not remember right now, just for educational purposes. And let's try to delete it. Okay, 204 no content, 300 or 3 milliseconds to execute this, and if we send it again trying to delete something that does not exist, we get a 404 not found. Perfectly, guys, we are done with our application. So what we have to do from now on is maybe try to improve some things here, like we have to add data validation. We also have to add some more security queries, and maybe in this get users route we should add the limit and offset to the query so we can do pagination of this request. It is actually really easy to do, and we can get the request params if you are willing to do this inside context.request.url.search params. This is an object which you can use to get the values. This is actually the URL search params. This is used inside modern JavaScript to give you an easy way of dealing with the query parameters you put in the URLs. So we can do inside our Msonia, actually we can put it right here. So get users, we could put the page and the limit, for example, and that's how the query would be. And when we execute it, it would paginate. We can pass in another page, we can pass the number of items we want per page, and that's how we deal with this. And there is also filtering, which is a little harder to do when we have only raw queries, but definitely we could do this too. So let me know if you want some more videos, and please tell me. You don't have to tell me that my English is not that good. I know that. I'm trying to improve. I'm trying to bring this content to you, and in a way you can understand. Alright, thanks for watching. I'm Bruno, and this was a really long video about Deno. Bye bye.